Welcome to the Photography Opinion Podcast. We discuss all things photo, video, and camera related. I'm Ben Lucas.
And I'm Stuart Marlantis.
And this is Photo Op.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Well, Ben just got back from a trip, and hey, have you checked out our stats for the podcast recently?
I have, and this is very exciting. So, after our last episode, we have 1,000 downloads. That means we have 1,000 happy people finally listening to this show. That is incredibly exciting. So, I know that you listen through a lot of different places, but if you listen on any other app that does not have comments or ratings, either going to my YouTube channel, giving that a thumbs up and a comment, or going to Apple Podcasts and giving us a rating, that helps the channel grow and helps more people find us. So I do appreciate, and I'm just completely blown away that where you have 1,000 listeners. That's fantastic.
Same here. It's super, super cool to see this gaining some traction, that we're helping some people. We're getting some good, hopefully good photo and video advice out there. So it is awesome to see that people are listening. Thank you so much. And yeah, definitely give us a rating on your platform of choice. That is extremely helpful, and we appreciate it very much.
Awesome. So let's kind of dive into this episode. Yeah, you mentioned I just got back from the trip.
Yeah.
I actually just got back when we recorded the last episode. I've got a haircut and a shave since then, so I feel so much better. This one will be a little less salty than why we hate technology.
Yeah.
But yeah, today I got to do a ton of fun landscape photography going out on my trip. We actually went through Yellowstone and Glacier National Park and the Grand Tetons. And even though there were a bunch of wildfires, we actually left before the wildfires started, but we kind of got caught in them a little bit. So not a great time to be doing landscape photography, but you can come back and listen to this episode when, the air is breathable.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of good locations for landscape photography, so it would have been a shame if you didn't take advantage of it. Sounds like you did.
I tried to. I tried my best, but I generally know that I can shoot people and products way better than landscapes. So why don't this episode you just help me out? Let's go through some tips. What do you think? We can talk about how to shoot landscape photography.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Before you even go on your trip, what do you need?
Well, you need a decent number of things. I think the first thing to think about is what is going to be supporting your camera. You can get away with not bringing a tripod or some sort of maybe tripod alternative on your trip, but it is certainly super helpful, and it's the only way to get certain shots, especially, long exposure. So that's where I would start, is with tripods. And the big thing that pretty much everybody says is go for carbon fiber tripods. And that is true, that they're the best tripods, really, and they're certainly the lightest for packing them out, hiking up for landscape shots. But for a long time, I personally wrote them off as way too expensive. I just said, whatever, I'll just carry a heavier, but also much less expensive aluminum tripod. And recently, I've been kind of looking at carbon fiber tripods, basically around a couple trips that I did in 2019, and boy, have they gotten very reasonably priced and still very good. Even when you could find cheap carbon fiber tripods, they were really poorly built. They fell apart really easily. But now there's tons of manufacturers making them. I'm sure a lot of this is propped up by Chinese manufacturing, but I should say quality Chinese manufacturing. And now there are so many that you can get that are very, very reasonably priced. And even from places, B&H, Adorama. This is not from some random Chinese site, like from legit sellers. So
I bought my carbon fiber tripod, I think 7 or 8 years ago for about $300, and it has not held up very well. At the time, it was, what is the best tripod I can get for $300? Because $300 is my budget. Mm-hmm. And so that was all I had to spend on a tripod. So it's what's the best I can get. And I think it lasted for maybe like 3 years or so before like one of the screws just kind of like came loose and won't tighten anymore. And it's just like, I never use it anymore. I actually did bring it on my trip in case, but it never left the car.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't
Sometimes you
use
don't need it. But yeah, the thing that I would recommend potentially is possibly even having more than one. I actually have a couple carbon fiber tripods. I've got one like pretty weighty, heavy one that for shorter range journeys that I really need a lot of extra stability for.
Or bigger cameras, or if you're shooting in
putting
studio, or if you're doing video.
Or you're doing motion lapses or something where you have extra heavy equipment on it. But I also have a super, super tiny one that I actually just like leave in the car because it's so tiny a lot of the time. And it has been super helpful to have on hand something that I can actually easily put inside a backpack or attached to the outside of a messenger bag or something. It's really small, just a couple of pounds, and it does a really good job even with like a full-size mirrorless camera like I have. So definitely look at carbon fiber tripods. They're not as expensive as you think anymore.
All right, so besides tripods, I know there's some really good tripod alternatives. The name of the game used to be GorillaPod.
Yeah.
I actually don't own one of those, so I'm pretty sure you do, right?
I do. I own a couple GorillaPods. I own the 3K and the 5K, which personally I pretty much only use the 5K because it's not that, I mean, it's bigger, but for me, it's not that much bigger, and the 5K can actually hold full-on cameras, so I use it for both, action cameras and full-size cameras, and they're pretty good. I do have some issues with them. Their longevity is kind of suspect. They seem to get a little wonky, a little loose over time. So they're cool for what they are. Being able to wrap it around a tree or something is really nice, although I don't find myself doing that as much as you think that you would with one. So yeah, I like having them as part of my kit. I use them enough to justify having the full-on 5K ones, but they are certainly an alternative to a real tripod for me. I only use them if I absolutely have to, or if I have such strict weight and size requirements that's the only thing I can bring.
So my tripod alternative that I actually love is the Platypod. So I do have a review specifically of the Platypod on my YouTube channel, which we will link down in the comments. But no, I found myself just absolutely loving it. There are two different versions. I forget what they're called. One's called the Max, and then the other one just might be a normal one, or it might be called a Mini or something like that. I found myself pretty much only using the Max because then I could put my motion control unit and a full-size ball head and my DSLR with a big lens on top of it, and it was great. It was fine. I mean, it was a little heavy, but it was pounds lighter than even a carbon fiber tripod. So, no, Platypod, definitely check it out. And for those of you who aren't sure what it is, basically just a flat plate of steel that has a bunch of holes and grooves and stuff drilled out to it so that you can attach feet. You can attach rubber feet if you're on that kind of surface. You can attach spiky feet by spinning them around so that you can kind of drill into rocks and dirt. You can put a ball head on it. You can put a tension strap on it if you need to wrap it around a tree, like you said. I pretty much only found myself using the large one. So if you only are getting one, unless you shoot small mirrorless cameras, definitely go for the larger version. I bought both just so I could review them. But the small one pretty much never left my bag. But those were great. I exclusively used that last week. So
Awesome. Yeah, as far as supports for your camera, I think that's about it. I wouldn't, especially since you're weight constrained, unless you're like super
if
ripped.
you're shooting landscapes, you're usually weight constrained because you have to go somewhere to get that landscape.
Exactly. So that's pretty much where it ends for me. Carbon fiber tripods, and then maybe a couple tripod alternatives if you have specific needs there. Next, I would look at lenses, I think.
So you definitely need an ultra wide.
Oh yeah, I mean, of course.
That's to be said.
Yeah.
And so the widest lens that I actually have is 20 mil. I also I've my zoom lens. I believe it's either a 24 or a 28. I want to say it's a 28 because it's Tamron. But I think that 28 to 20 is actually a huge difference. So I would not go on a landscape shoot with anything more telephoto than a 20 as your wide lens if you can help it.
Yeah, I mean, if you just don't have the budget, like, sure, stick at 28. Like, that's what you can do, or 24. But yeah, I have my ultra wide zoom is the 17 to 28 Tamron, and I really love that range, especially for landscapes. So I use that lens just constantly. I bought it for a trip, and it was well worth it. I also have a manual 14 mil, which is even more ridiculously huge. That being said, or ridiculously wide. That being said, I don't use
those manual lenses, though, would actually be a pretty good investment for landscape photography because you don't need fast action. You don't need autofocus. The landscape isn't going anywhere.
Yeah. The 14 mil I have is like I bought that far before my my wide zoom, and because it was one, reasonably priced, and two, it got me those super ultra wide shots that I really wanted. So if you're on a budget, if you're going to shoot a lot of landscapes that might be worth looking at, they are going to be gigantically heavy because the element to get the front element to get a lens like that is going to be a massive chunk of glass. They're going to be very much manual lenses. So I should say that since I went to a wide zoom, I hardly ever use the manual 14 mil, but it does exist if I really need that extra width. It's very cool to have, and they're, like I said, pretty reasonably priced. So worth looking
before I bought my 20 mil, I actually I did buy, I forget what the zoom range was, but an ultra wide zoom, but it was maybe 3 times as heavy, 2 times as big. The front element kept on like protruding out of my bag. It didn't really fit because the lens, it was such a bulbous lens. The cap kind of kept sliding off and stuff was like scratching against it. So I just returned it, and I actually happened to be going on a trip at the time, so I rented that 20 mil for the trip, and then I just decided, like, I don't miss the other one. I'm just gonna buy this and keep it.
Excellent.
So I mean, that's, it's a personal preference thing. That's the other thing too, is don't buy a lens before you rent it once. And a lot of times a rental company will give you your rental money back if you end up buying a lens from them. So
good deal.
Let's see, what other recommendations of things to bring or not bring?
Well, in lenses, I would don't sleep on telephoto lenses for landscapes. That is literally an entirely new style you can add to your landscape repertoire. I mean, I know most landscapes are wide or ultra wide, and that's really cool, but you can do some really interesting, really unique compositions with telephoto lenses for landscapes. So yes, they are big, they are heavy, but you can do some very cool things. I would not just write those off as something you shouldn't take. I would consider that.
The good things that telephoto lenses can do for landscape photography is the things that are really far away, they compress the frame and they bring them a lot closer to the lens. So instead of getting a huge rock in the foreground and a tiny little mountain, you can get that huge mountain in the background and bring it really close to you. So it's a different style and a different look, but yeah, definitely one that you shouldn't neglect.
Yeah. At least take a look at it, even if you don't ultimately end up shooting telephoto for your landscapes. It's worth a look.
Any other gear recs?
Can I do a gear like non-rec?
Yeah, hit me.
Don't be a drone asshole.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, so I like drones. They're really cool. I've been flying them for 8 years at this point.
You flew them before they were cool.
To some degree, yeah.
And you flew them before they were like widely available and affordable too.
Before drone gimbals were even a thing, really. But yeah, so I really like drones. They're really cool. They make for some extremely nice landscape shots. That being said, they are, unfortunately, due to the drone aforementioned people, have been banned in a lot of parks. I used to be able to fly them basically anywhere, and I wasn't a problem. I didn't disturb people. I didn't disturb wildlife, and I was able to just do my shots and do cool stuff. And a lot of us were like that, and then a lot of people invaded the hobby and did very bad things and damaged property and chased animals, and now drones are banned all over the place. So one, thanks for that, and two, can you please not do that anymore? The hobby's already hurt enough by that behavior. So one, obey your local laws, please, for the place you're going. If your park says no drones, don't bring one. Just that ship has sailed. Don't be that guy who posts a YouTube video and thinks like, oh, look at how cool and edgy I am for breaking the law. The FAA is starting to get really particular about this stuff, and if the video gets at all popular, they're going to notice and they're going to come after you. And this has happened more than once.
Literally the day I got back from my trip, someone posted a drone video in Yellowstone.
Yep.
And I'm like, I was there yesterday, and it said no drones.
Yep. Just don't do it. The only time that you can go around that is if you get a permit, you get permission. If you go through all the proper channels, awesome. That's following the rules, and you're good to go. But please, please, please do not be that person. You are literally ruining it for everybody else. And even if you're in a place where you can fly, just be kind, be considerate for other people, be considerate for the nature around you. Just be nice, and everybody should be totally fine with you. I don't have any problems. You see some videos of people getting super mad, jumping down drone operators' throats about them flying and stuff. I have literally never had that experience happen because I am open and honest, and I don't harass people. And anybody who has a question, instead of escalating it by being a jerk, I just say what I'm there for and what I'm doing. And I even often show people where I'm flying and what pictures or video I'm taking. And oftentimes people are really interested in that and think that's really cool, and it doesn't escalate into a worse situation. So
I remember
just
one
don't
time
be that guy.
I remember one time you and I were flying something on a college campus because we were doing work for the school, and a security guard came up to us, and we're like, oh shoot, the security guard's gonna be like, what are you doing here? You're not allowed to be here, and we're gonna have to explain this whole thing. But he came up to us, and you were just really nice to him, and he's like, oh, I also have a drone, I'm super interested, what are you guys doing? And then you guys just talked drone parts for 20 minutes.
Yep, exactly. Just be a nice human being, and you would be surprised at how open people are to you flying around. Again, not an excuse to fly around and be a jerk, just to prompt that interaction, but just be a nice person, be considerate. Don't harass people or animals or anything. That's just going to make it even worse for everybody else. So yes, that is my drone spiel, and that's it.
Cool. So let's see. What are some other things that are useful? We talked about stabilization. We talked about cameras and lenses. I know I like to take behind the scenes footage when I'm out doing landscape photography, because usually it will take me a while to actually get the actual landscape up, but I like to say I'm here shooting landscape photography.
Yeah, so I would strongly encourage people to do that, even if it's on your phone. Shoot some video. Ideally, shoot some video with your real camera, because it probably shoots better video than your phone. You never know where you're going to use it. You might use it for, like you said, a behind-the-scenes video, or, social media posts, right? We all have to do it, I suppose. Or maybe you get a really cool shot, or you set up something really interesting, and you want to do a little explainer video. Maybe you think of that at the time and actually narrate to camera about what you're doing, or maybe later you have some context in video for what you were working on, so you can narrate over the top and share with people. So I would say, considering how cheap and easy storage is, at least shoot a couple of clips of video. At the very worst, it's a memory for you to return to later and say, oh, that was really fun. I'm glad I have a little bit of video of that. So you can't really go wrong there.
Yeah, shoot it on your phone, and then another thing for phones is I know you've talked about having those little phone clips.
Yeah.
So you can stick that on your other platypod or your gorilla pod,
Hmm.
or just kind of perched up against a rock or something,
Hmm.
so that
Hmm.
way you can actually be in the shot with your camera if you want to.
Exactly. Good for selfies and yeah, and again, context for what you're doing. People can see you with the camera working that shot. So I would phone tripod adapters are tiny, super easy to throw in a bag. There's a whole bunch of different styles. I would go for that. I would also, along the same lines of a small alternative camera, if you've got a GoPro, maybe bring one. That's something I've used as a behind the scenes camera very frequently instead of my phone. That's one that, again, I feel more comfortable propping up on a rock somewhere. If it falls, I'm like, well, at least it's not my phone falling.
At least you don't break your phone.
Yeah, at
Yeah.
least you don't break your phone. And you probably aren't going to break the GoPro. So, yeah, so if you've got some GoPro or other action camera, definitely consider bringing that. Again, I know it's more stuff to bring, but they're pretty small. So it has definitely been worth it. I mean, if I actually I can't think of a time, at least in landscape photography, that I don't bring a GoPro just in case. And it has very frequently paid off. So definitely worth
Nice.
thinking about.
I own a couple of GoPros, and I always forget to break them out. They're
Yeah.
in my bag, and I forget to break them out. But all right, so we've talked about gear.
Mm-hmm.
What other things are helpful? Maybe not physical things. What other tips are helpful for getting those photos?
Boy, there's a whole bunch. Be there early is a big
Oh
one,
my God, yeah.
especially now with the internet popularizing so many landscape sites. Being there early, of course, everybody's going to say this, but a lot of people still don't follow it. So you would be surprised at how empty you can find places if you just actually get up early and go. I
Oh,
have regretted
for
this in the
sure.
past.
So yeah, when I was on my trip, I thought, okay, I'm going to escape the pandemic by
Mm-hmm.
driving to the middle of Montana, middle of nowhere. I'm gonna go out hiking, like 10 hours hiking, and we'll just be peace and quiet and away from all the people. I was passing people on the trail every 30 seconds for like the first 6 to 8 hours.
It's nutty. I went on a trip to Japan about a year ago. I was in the off season. I was like, oh well, we're gonna be there early enough. Like I don't need to get up that early to a particular place. Doesn't really matter. But I was like, oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Like I don't need to get up that early. Like we're in the off season. Not that many people are going to be there. And I got there and it was just like slammed with with tourists. And I was one of them. So like I'm not saying oh evil tourists. Like I was a tourist too. I was adding to that crowd. But yeah, just assuming it'll be fine. Because oh you're far out enough, you're in the off season, you're in a place where a lot of people are going,
Yeah.
there's a pandemic going on, like who's going to be here. Yeah, it will backfire. I swear there's some like universal karmic justice that if you say it's early enough that
It's
the
not early
universe,
enough.
yeah, the universe will conspire against you if you say that. So don't say that to yourself. It's
I,
not
I
early
have
enough.
I have two other stories from my trip on
Sure.
where be there early would have been great advice. So me and the buddy I was going with, neither of us are really the early riser types, and so on the first day we just kind of got up when we got up, and it took us an hour just to like get into the park through the like gate check to see if you paid for a pass. And then when we finally got to the like first little lake on the trail, there was like this dock that goes out, and the dock on the lake is literally like the good spot. Like that's why they built the dock there. And there were already like 4 photographers all lined up with their tripods on the dock, and there was no space for me. So I'm like, cool, I can't shoot on the dock. Let's figure out something else or come back the next day. The second thing where be there early would have been great is I went up the Sun Road, and we get to the very end of the Sun Road, far end of Glacier Park. And what happened was we go down, and I'm kind of looking around scouting, and I'm trying to figure out where I want to shoot this kind of sun setting over all of these mountains. and I figure out the spot, and I look at the sunset time, and I'm like, okay, how long will it take us tomorrow to be able to come do this? And so I'm kind of doing all my planning and preparations, and I know where the sun is going to go down and at what time sunset is. But the one thing that I forgot about is sunset is when the sun dips below the horizon, not when it dips below the mountain range. So I thought, I'll get there like an hour and a half, 2 hours early, set up, be good. I had like 3 minutes from when I got there to when the sun actually dipped behind the mountain. I'm like, I can't believe I missed it. I thought 2 hours early.
Yep.
That's enough for an airport. Why wouldn't it be enough for me to set a camera down on a tripod? This is ridiculous. No, it wasn't early enough. I missed it.
Side tangent. Landscape photography is very frequently about going somewhere and then waiting a really long time. So just get used to that.
Yes, definitely. The one thing that I learned is that patience wins out in the end. Landscape photography, it is a game of patience. It is a game of hurry up and wait. You need to wait for just the right light, hit the spot that you're looking at. You need to wait for kind of all the elements to come together. And there are some days where you go out and just nothing looks good. And so that's actually what happened to us. I was talking about when I was planning for the Sun Road, we were there roughly about 2 hours before sunset, but the day was just shaping up that the the sun was behind kind of the haze of wildfire smoke, and it was just going to disappear and get dark. There was not going to be a good sunset. There was not going to be beautiful colors. There was not going to be interesting textures. There was not going to be anything. So we just kind of looked at it and called it and said, we're going to try again tomorrow. So we planned our day around making sure that we could be in that spot to get that photo the next day. And it turned out okay. There are definitely some things that I wish I would have done better. If I was a real landscape photographer, maybe I even would have gone back again. But we had a pace to keep. So
Yep. Yeah, it's a very Zen style of photography. You need to be very patient, and you need to be okay with being patient. So that's how it goes sometimes. But that's
for sure. So now that we've kind of talked about the prepping for all the gear and the planning on like getting out there and stuff, I know there's definitely something to be said for location scouting, knowing where the sun's gonna be. Actually, what are some of your favorite apps for kind of like sun tracking or location scouting?
The Photographer's Ephemeris is an app that I've used quite a bit for that kind of stuff. It is paid. I don't think there's even a free version. Maybe there's a demo, but the Photographer's Ephemeris is where I would go for those sorts of questions. Sun tracking and stuff like that. Nice. Also, just like Google Maps.
True.
Google Earth.
I do have a second recommendation that is free for people. So I don't know if this is on iPhone because I have Android, but it is called Sunboard. And so Sunboard basically just draws the Google Map data, but then it tells you really quickly at the top of the screen sunset and sunrise times. And then it shows like a little ring with where the sun currently is, and then a ring of where the sun will be at sun up and sundown with kind of like time markers going across it. So you can quickly gauge, this is the spot that I'm in because it draws the Google Maps thing, and I can draw a line that, the sun will be right there over that mountain at 4 p.m. or whatever. So that's just a useful free little app that I absolutely love. So if you're an Android user, definitely go check that one out. Cool. That's something that I just used all the time, and actually it worked really well even out without reception because I downloaded the Google Map beforehand and it used that Google Map data to like refresh and find
super
it.
Handy. Yeah. The Photographer's Ephemeris, by the way, is both for Android and iOS. It's on Android right at the second. It is $2.99. I'm not sure how much it is on iOS. So.
Whew, pricey.
Oh yeah, steep, but it is good.
Definitely worth. Yeah, there's some things that are just totally worth it.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you're going out doing landscapes, safe hiking rules apply. Just like we said, don't be a jerk with the drone. Be be safe when you're hiking. Water, comfortable shoes, have, the 10 essentials with you if you're ever in the Boy Scouts. Don't go off trail, especially not if there are signs and laws saying you're not allowed to go off trail. Don't destroy plants and foliage, and, don't leave trash. This is basic stuff. Don't
push
be a
over
dick.
big rocks. Don't carve your name into a monument. Just, yeah.
We should
Too
know
much of
this
that.
stuff. We should know this stuff by now.
We should. So be safe and don't be a jerk.
Any final tips to close this out?
As far as when you're actually taking the shot, certainly don't neglect the foreground. A lot of landscape photography feels really samey because it's all shot from like a mile away. Everything is just super far away. You can do some pretty cool stuff with the foreground.
When you're shooting something that is like a mountain
a
lake or something like that, where you're only seeing the backside. You're only seeing the mountain in the distance. You're only seeing the horizon. You're only seeing the edge of the lake. If you can find the front edge and get like some rocks or ripples in the water or beach
Tree, something,
putting anything in the foreground makes your photo more interesting than the postcard. My general rule of thumb when I'm looking for compositions is, if I could buy a postcard of this in the shop, why would I take that photo?
For sure. There's a lot of like Lake Moraine Lake, whatever, in Canada is a super popular one where everybody takes the exact same photo over and over and over again. Make it different, choose different stuff in the foreground, choose a different angle. That foreground space is where you can distinguish your photo from everybody else's. So don't just go there and take the same photo that everybody else has that's on all of the posters, on all of the postcards, and make it a little different if you can.
Yeah, I would say my very last tip would be, don't be afraid to fail. You go to these beautiful... I kind of felt this way at Yellowstone. I think I got some gorgeous photos from Glacier, but I went to Yellowstone and it felt like a failure. Well, I was there for 2 days, and every single photo I took, nothing was good. Nothing was good or better than the postcards in the gift shop. There was nothing that was exciting to me as I was kind of walking around and seeing all this cool stuff. And I know Yellowstone is a huge favorite for tons of people, yourself included.
Yeah, huge. What I would say with something like landscape photography and Yellowstone specifically is, if you fail, what's the worst that happened? You had a good time hiking around Yellowstone. Like, oh no, that's such a burden to have done that. Like at the very worst, you're probably going to have a great hike. And that's an awesome thing in itself. And let's say that you didn't have a great hike. Let's say that it poured down rain or it hailed or something. And
or let's say that you had a 100-pound backpack and you had to hike for 10 miles in 45-degree incline. It's not like that actually happened to me last week. No, that's way too specific. That definitely did not happen.
So let's say it is a bad experience like that. I mean, look, you're laughing about it, right? It's a fun story to talk about later, or at least it's a story to share in a commiserative way with other people. So
this is a secret between you, me, and our 1,000 podcast listeners.
Yeah, exactly. So at the very worst, it is an interesting story that you will likely laugh about later, even if not at the time. But I would say most of the time, it's still just a good hike. And I mean, if you're like us and you live in the Pacific Northwest, it seems like that's what everybody does. So you can at least brag to your friends about whatever hike you just did.
Yeah.
But yeah, and if your photos suck, oh well, you went out and took them, you tried, you practiced. I mean, that's never a bad thing. So,
the only way that you can get better is by practicing. So you failed. Maybe this trip wasn't the one where you get your Pulitzer Prize winning photo of that mountain.
I never will, so that's fine.
And
no matter what style.
So you know what? You plan another trip. You go out, you try again. And I would say look over your photos, analyze them, try and figure out what do you like, what do you not like, what can you do better next time, and then just take another trip. Go shoot more photos.
Yep, just go shoot more. And that, everyone, is landscape photography. thank you all for joining us and bringing us up actually over 1,000 listeners. We hugely appreciate it. Give us a rating on your platform of choice. Leave a comment or a thumbs up or whatever on the YouTube channel. Thanks again, and we will see you next time for Art versus Artist.
If you have questions or ideas for future episodes, you can email us at hello@photo-op.show.
Watch us on Ben's YouTube channel at NomCreative.
As in Om Nom Nom.
Share this with a friend, and you can listen to Photo Op anywhere podcasts are sold.
Or download it. 'Cause it's free.